The stars had always seemed peaceful to Park Jun. As a captain in the Korean Air Force, he had spent many nights looking up at the sky from his base near Seoul. He would often call his younger sister Hana, who was studying medicine at the university, and they would talk about the universe and what might be out there. Neither of them knew that something was watching. The Velen Empire had ruled 1,000 star systems for more than 300 cycles. Their ships traveled faster than light. Their weapons could destroy cities in seconds. Their emperor, a being called Koris, sat on a throne made from the bones of conquered species. To them, the galaxy was a garden, and they were the gardeners. Everything else was either a tool or a weed. When Velen scouts first discovered Earth, they spent only a few hours studying it. The blue planet was home to billions of creatures who called themselves humans. These humans had basic technology. They had split the atom, but they had not yet left their own solar system. They fought wars among themselves over land and resources. They were, in the eyes of the Velens, primitive and divided. The scout commander sent his report to the Empire. Humans were classified as a Class 7 species. This meant they were not considered intelligent enough for diplomacy. They were suitable only for labor. Their strong bodies and adaptable minds would make them excellent workers in the Empire's mining colonies. Emperor Koris received the report and barely glanced at it. A new labor species was found every few cycles. It was nothing special. He approved the collection order with a simple wave of his hand. The collection ships arrived on Earth on a quiet autumn night. Park Jun was sleeping in his quarters when the first alarms went off. He ran outside and saw something that made his blood turn cold. Massive ships hung in the sky above Seoul, blocking out the stars. They made no sound. Beams of blue light shot down from their bellies, and wherever the light touched, people vanished. Jun tried to reach the command center, but the chaos was too great. Cars crashed on the highways. People screamed and ran in every direction. The military tried to respond, but their missiles exploded harmlessly against the ship's shields. Fighter jets were swatted from the sky like insects, and the light found Jun. He felt a strange pulling sensation, and suddenly he was no longer on the ground. He was floating upward, surrounded by hundreds of other people. He saw faces twisted with fear. He heard children crying for their parents. And then everything went dark. When Jun woke up, he was in a metal room with gray walls. His sister Hana was beside him, unconscious but alive. Around them were thousands of other humans, packed together like animals. The air smelled of fear and sweat. A Velen guard walked past their cage. The creature was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and 4 arms. Its eyes were completely black, showing no emotion. It looked at the humans the way a farmer might look at cattle. "Where are we?" Jun shouted at the guard. "What do you want with us?" The guard did not answer. It did not even acknowledge that Jun had spoken. To the Velen, a human speaking was like a dog barking. It was noise, nothing more. Back on Earth, the sun rose over a city in shock. 12,000 people had vanished from Seoul in a single night. Similar reports came from other cities around the world: Tokyo, New York, London, Mumbai. The aliens had taken people from everywhere. The world's governments held emergency meetings. Some leaders wanted to surrender, to beg the aliens for mercy. Others wanted to fight, though they had no idea how. Most were simply paralyzed with fear. But in a secret bunker beneath the city of Bizon, one man was already making plans. Admiral Quan Te was 63 years old. He had served in the Navy for 4 decades. He had fought in small wars and trained for big ones. But nothing had prepared him for this. Yet as he looked at the satellite images of the alien ships, he did not feel despair. He felt anger. Cold, quiet, patient anger. They did not send a message. he said to the other officers in the room. They did not make demands. They did not ask for our surrender. They simply took our people. A young lieutenant spoke up. Sir, what does that mean? It means they do not see us as a threat, Quan replied. They do not even see us as enemies. They see us as animals. He paused. That is their first mistake. Over the next few days, Quan gathered intelligence. The military had been tracking strange signals from deep space for years. They had recovered pieces of alien technology from a crashed probe in the mountains. Scientists had studied these fragments in secret, learning what they could. The aliens were not gods. They were flesh and blood. Their ships were machines that could be understood. Their weapons followed the laws of physics. They could be fought. They could be killed. Quan called a meeting of the world's remaining leaders. He spoke through encrypted channels, his face hard as stone. The creatures who took our people believe we are nothing, he said. They believe we will cry and beg and wait to be harvested again. They are wrong. He showed them images of the alien ships. He showed them data on their technology. He showed them a plan. We will not ask for our people back, Quan said. We will take them, and we will make these aliens understand what happens when you wake a sleeping predator. The leaders were silent. Some thought Quan was mad. How could humans fight an empire that spanned 1,000 stars? But then, one by one, they began to nod. They had no other choice. Surrender meant slavery. Waiting meant death. The only path forward was through fire. Within 72 hours, the nations of Earth signed a treaty unlike any in history. All wars were suspended. All borders were opened. All resources were shared. Humanity was now one species with one goal. Survival. In his cell on a distant world, Park Jun held his sister's hand as she finally woke up. Her eyes were filled with fear. What's happening? She whispered. Where are we? Jun looked at the metal walls around them. He thought of his home, his country, his planet. He thought of the guard who had looked at them like they were nothing. We are prisoners, he said quietly. But not for long. He did not know how he would escape. He did not know if Earth would come for them. But deep in his heart, he knew one thing with absolute certainty. This was not the end. It was the beginning. 18 months passed on Earth. To the Velen Empire, this was less than a heartbeat. Their records showed that primitive species usually needed decades to recover from a harvest. Many never recovered at all. They simply waited in fear until the collectors returned. The Velens did not bother to watch Earth. Why would they? The planet had no warships, no energy shields, no weapons worth noticing. The humans were busy fighting each other, as primitives always did. This was their second mistake. Deep beneath the Taebaek Mountains in Korea, a woman named Yoon Mina had not slept in 3 days. Her eyes were red and tired, but they burned with purpose. Around her, 400 scientists worked in shifts that never ended. Computer screens glowed with equations. Machines hummed with power. Mina was a quantum physicist. Before the harvest, she had been working on theories about space and time. Her research was considered interesting but useless. Pure science with no practical purpose. And the aliens came, and everything changed. Mina's husband had been taken in the soul harvest. She had watched the blue light pull him into the sky. She had screamed his name until her throat bled. Now she did not scream anymore. She worked. The fragments of alien technology recovered from the crashed probe had sat in military storage for years. No one had understood them. But Mina looked at them differently. She did not see alien machines. She saw puzzles waiting to be solved. Within 6 months, her team had cracked the basic principles of fold space travel. It was the technology that allowed ships to cross vast distances in moments. The aliens had used it for thousands of years. Humans learned it in half a year. It should not be possible, one of her colleagues said. This technology is centuries ahead of us. Mina smiled grimly. Desperation is a powerful teacher. In another part of the country, General Beek Sung was building a fleet. The ships were not pretty. They were made from whatever materials humanity could find. Old submarines were welded to cargo vessels. Airplane parts were combined with space shuttle engines. The designs broke every rule of proper engineering, but they worked. Sung walked through the construction yards at night, watching thousands of workers labor under bright lights. They came from every nation. Chinese engineers worked beside American welders. Russian scientists shared data with Japanese programmers. The old divisions of humanity had melted away like snow in spring. How long until the first ship is ready? Admiral Quan asked during one of his visits. 3 months, Sung replied. Maybe 2 if we push harder. Push harder. Sung nodded. He understood. Every day they waited was another day their people suffered in alien prisons, far away, on a mining world called Velan 7. Park Jun was learning what suffering truly meant. The humans had been put to work in deep underground mines. They dug for minerals that powered Velan technology. The work was brutal. The air was thick with dust. Many humans died from exhaustion or accidents. The Velan guards did not care. Dead workers were simply replaced. There were always more primitives to harvest, but Jun did not break. Instead, he watched. He learned. He noticed that the guards changed shifts at the same time each day. He saw that certain tunnels were. Enoch watched. He discovered that the Velans were lazy and overconfident. They did not expect resistance from creatures they considered animals. Slowly, carefully, Jun began to organize. He found other humans who had not given up hope. Former soldiers, engineers, teachers, farmers. He brought them together in secret meetings deep in the mines. They shared information. They made plans. They waited. His sister Hannah proved invaluable. As a medical student, she was assigned to treat sick workers. This gave her freedom to move around the colony. She studied the local plants and found some that were poisonous to Velans. She collected samples and hid them. When the time comes, she told her brother, we will be ready. Jun nodded, but he worried. Even if they could fight the guards, they could not escape the planet. They had no ships. They had no way to call for help. Earth was impossibly far away. He did not know that help was already coming. On Earth, the first warship was completed on a cold winter morning. They called it the Indomitable. It was ugly and strange, a patchwork of human and alien technology. But when its engines fired for the first time, the scientists cheered and cried. Admiral Quan stood on the bridge and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, his people were waiting. Run the weapons test, he ordered. The ship's main guns were based on nuclear technology, but they had been modified using knowledge from the alien fragments. The missiles carried warheads that could bypass Velan shields. The Velans had never faced such weapons because no primitive species had ever developed them. The test was successful. The weapons worked perfectly. Over the next few months, more ships were completed. They were given names chosen by the families of Via. Taken, Hope, Vengeance, Dawn, Return. Name carried the weight of 12,000 stolen. Lives, Dr. Jung Mina personally oversaw the installation of the fold space drives. The technology was still new and dangerous. During one test, a ship vanished and never returned. 30 crew members were lost. Mina attended their memorial service and then went back to work. There was no time for grief. Not yet. By the end of 18 months, humanity had a fleet of 200 ships. It was small compared to the Velan Empire's thousands, but it was enough to begin. Admiral Quan called a final meeting with the fleet commanders. They gathered in a room beneath the mountains, surrounded by maps of distant star systems. The Velans have a small outpost on a world called Reth 4, Quan explained. It is a communications hub. If we destroy it, we can blind them for weeks. This will give us time to reach the prison worlds. General Sue raised a concern. The outpost has 3 million civilians. We will be attacking a populated world. Quan's face did not change. Did they worry about civilians when they took our children from their beds? Silence filled the room. We will not massacre innocents, Quan continued. But we will not hold back either. This is war. They started it. We will finish it. The commanders nodded. They understood. Mercy was a luxury they could not afford. The night before the fleet departed, Yun Mina stood alone on a hill, overlooking the launch site. The ships glowed under the moonlight. Tomorrow, they would fly into the unknown. Many would not return. She thought of her husband. She wondered if he was still alive. She wondered if she would ever see him again. "Wait for me," she whispered to the stars. "We are coming." Below her, the fleet's engines began to power up. The ground shook with their force. And then, one by one, the ships rose into the sky and vanished into the darkness between stars. The hunt had begun. The planet, Reth 4, was a peaceful world. 3 million Velans lived there in cities of glass and silver. They worked in offices, raised families, and never thought about war. The outpost had not been attacked in over 500 cycles. Why would it be? The Empire controlled everything within 100 light years. Governor Tellus was eating his evening meal when the alarms began to scream. He looked up in confusion. Alarms were for drills and emergencies. There were no drills scheduled. What emergency could possibly threaten Reth 4? Then the sky caught fire. Admiral Quan's fleet emerged from fold space at exactly 3 hours past midnight local time. The Velan sensor stations detected the ships immediately, but the operators did not understand what they were seeing. The signatures were strange, wrong. They matched no known species in the Empire's database. They had 14. Seconds to wonder before the first missiles hit. The electromagnetic pulse weapons struck the planet's power grid first. Every light on Reth 4 went dark. Every computer went dead. Every communication device fell silent. In a single moment, the entire world was blind and deaf. Then came the real attack. Nuclear fire bloomed across the night sky. The warheads had been specially designed by Dr. Yu-Mina's team. They carried radiation frequencies that slipped through Velan shields like water through sand. Military bases vanished in white light. The communications relay, the main target, was hit by 17 missiles at once. Nothing remained but a crater filled with melted glass. On the ground, panic spread like wildfire. Velans ran through dark streets, screaming questions that no one could answer. Who was attacking them? Why? How was this possible? Lieutenant Shin Yoon led the ground assault. She was 32 years old, born in a small village near the sea. Before the harvest, she had been a helicopter pilot. She had never killed anyone. Now she commanded 500 soldiers who had trained for this moment for over a year. Their dropships landed near the backup communications station. This smaller facility was deep underground, protected by thick walls and elite guards. The humans needed to capture it intact. From there, they could send a message to the entire Empire. Move fast, Shin ordered her troops. No mercy. No hesitation. They moved through the burning city like shadows. Velan civilians fled at the sight of them. Shin let them go. She was not here for civilians. She was here for the station. The guards at the entrance were still confused by the blackout. They did not expect an attack from the ground. When the humans appeared from the smoke, they barely had time to raise their weapons. The battle was short and brutal. Human soldiers had trained in close combat for months. They knew Velen anatomy, knew where to strike for maximum damage. The four-armed aliens were tall and strong, but they had grown soft from centuries without real war. Within 20 minutes, the station was secured. Shin stood in the control room, surrounded by dead guards and damaged equipment. Her soldiers worked quickly to restore power. They had brought their own generators, their own technicians. Nothing was left to chance. "We are ready," a young soldier reported. "The broadcast system is online." Shin nodded and stepped aside. Admiral Kwan's face appeared on a portable screen. He had recorded the message before the attack began. To the beings of the Velen Empire, his voice echoed through the speakers. "My name is Quan Te. I speak for the people of Earth. 18 months ago, your ships came to our world. You took 12,000 of our people without warning, without reason, without mercy. You treated us as animals to be harvested." The message was being transmitted across every Velen frequency. Millions would hear it. Billions eventually. "This is our answer. You took our people. We are taking them back. This is not a request. This is not a negotiation. This is a promise. Every prison world, every mining colony, every place where you hold our brothers and sisters. We are coming for them." Quan paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was colder than space itself. "You wanted livestock. You found wolves. Remember this day. Remember what happens when you mistake humanity for prey." The message ended. 3 days later, the recording reached the throne world of Velen Prime. Emperor Koris listened to it in his great hall, surrounded by his advisors and generals. When it finished, silence hung in the air like poison. "What species is this?" Koris demanded. "Where did they come from?" His chief advisor pulled up the old records. "They call themselves humans. Great One, they were cataloged as a Class 7 species. Pre-emergence. No space travel. No significant technology. Suitable only for labor extraction. Then how did they do this?" Chorus's voice rose in anger. "How did they build ships? How did they penetrate our shields? How did they destroy an entire outpost?" No one had answers. General Veth, commander of the Imperial fleet, stepped forward. "Great One, this is clearly a mistake. A fluke. Perhaps they captured one of our ships and used its weapons. They cannot possibly have the capability for sustained warfare. And if you are wrong?" Veth hesitated. "I am not wrong, Great One. They are primitives. We will send a battle group to their system and remind them of their place." Chorus considered this. His pride demanded vengeance. This small species had humiliated him before the entire empire. They had to be crushed, but something in the human admiral's eyes troubled him. There was no fear there, no desperation, only cold certainty. "Send the battle group," Chorus ordered finally. "Find their world. Burn it to ash." He did not know that the human fleet was no longer near Earth. They were already moving toward the prison worlds, using routes that Velen sensors could not detect. They were not running away. They were pressing forward. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Admiral Quan received reports of the destruction on Reth 4. The mission had been a complete success. The communications relay was destroyed. The backup station was C. Aptured. The message had been sent. Casualties? He asked. 47 dead, his aide reported. 112 wounded. We lost 2 dropships. Quan closed his eyes. 47 lives. 47 families that would receive terrible news. This was the cost of war. Honor them, he said quietly. Record their names. When this is over, they will be remembered as the first to fall in humanity's greatest battle. He opened his eyes and looked at the star map. 17 red dots marked the locations of known prison worlds. 17 targets. Hundreds of thousands of humans waiting to be freed. Set course for Velen 7, he ordered. That is where the largest group is held. That is where we strike next. The fleet shifted direction and vanished into fold space. Behind them, Rethfor burned under an alien sky. And across the Empire, for the first time in 1,000 cycles, people whispered a new word with fear in their voices. Humans. Park. June had been counting days since the moment he was taken. 563 days as a prisoner. 563 days of darkness, pain, and waiting. On day 564, the sky exploded. He was deep in the mines when the ground shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. The lights flickered and died. Around him, human workers stopped and looked at each other with confusion and hope. Then they heard the explosions. June dropped his mining tool and ran toward the surface. His lungs burned from the effort. His legs ached. But something in his heart told him that this was the moment he had waited for. When he reached the entrance, he saw fire falling from the sky. Human ships. Dozens of them. They tore through the orbital defenses like paper. Velen fighters launched to meet them, but they were too slow, too surprised. The battle was already decided before it truly began. The guards around the mining complex were in chaos. They shouted at each other in their strange language, pointing at the sky, grabbing weapons, running in circles. They had trained for many things, but not for this. Not for an attack from a species they considered animals. June found his sister near the medical building. Hana's eyes were wide, but her hands were steady. She held a small bag filled with the poisons she had spent months collecting. Is it time? She asked. June watched a Velen transport crash into the hills nearby. Human soldiers were already jumping from dropships, their weapons firing. Yes, he said. It is time. The signal spread through the human prisoners like lightning. For months, June had built a network. He had found the fighters, the planners, the believers. They had hidden weapons made from mining tools. They had memorized the positions of every guard. They had waited for exactly this moment. Now, they rose. In tunnel after tunnel, prisoners attacked their captors. The Velens were taller and stronger, but the humans were desperate and organized. They knew which doors to block, which paths to take, which guards to target first. Hana moved through the chaos with purpose. She found the water supply for the guard barracks and added her poisons. Within minutes, dozens of Velens collapsed, their bodies unable to process the toxins she had created from local plants. June led a group of 50 prisoners against the main security center. The guards inside had locked the doors and were calling for reinforcement. But reinforcement was not coming. The ships in orbit were all burning. Break it down, June ordered. They used mining charges, the same explosives that had carved tunnels through rock for years. The doors blew inward. The prisoners poured through. The battle inside was terrible and short. When it was over, June stood in a room filled with dead Velens and freed humans. His hands shook. His shirt was covered in blood that was not his own. A young man ran up to him. Captain Park. The sky people have landed. June did not understand at first. Then he realized. The ships. The human ships. Earth had come for them. He walked outside and saw something that made his heart stop. Human soldiers in gray. Uniforms were marching through the compound. They carried weapons that glowed with strange light. They moved with discipline and purpose. And leading them was a tall officer with cold eyes and a Korean flag on his shoulder. Commander O'Day had landed with the first wave of liberation forces. He had expected to find broken prisoners waiting for rescue. Instead, he found a revolution already in progress. He stopped in front of June and looked at the scene around him. Velen bodies lay everywhere. Human prisoners, still wearing their work clothes, stood guard over captured equipment. The main security center was burning. You were supposed to wait for rescue. Day said. June met his eyes without flinching. We got tired of waiting. For a moment, there was silence. Then Day smiled. It was the first time he had smiled in months. Report, he said. Park June, Captain, Korean Air Force. We have secured the main compound, the mining facilities, and the water supply. Guard casualties are approximately 70%. Prisoner casualties are. June's voice faltered. We lost many. You did well, they said. More than well. Earth is proud of you. The liberation of Velen 7 took 6 more hours. Human ships landed in waves, bringing soldiers, doctors, and supplies. The remaining Velen guards surrendered when they saw that resistance was hopeless. They were not killed, only captured. Admiral Kwan had given strict orders. We are not like them. We do not slaughter the helpless. Let them live, so they can return home and tell their people what they saw. Across the sector, similar scenes unfolded on 16 other worlds. Human strike teams hit every known prison location simultaneously. The coordination was perfect. The Empire, still reeling from the attack on Reth 4, could not respond in time. 217,000 humans were freed in a single day. On the transport ship carrying survivors back to the fleet, Hana sat beside her brother. She was exhausted. Her hands were still stained with chemicals and blood. But she was smiling. We did it, she said. We actually did it. June nodded, but his face was troubled. Through the window, he could see the planet they were leaving behind. Fire still burned on its surface. How many had died today? How many more would die before this war ended? It is not over, he said quietly. The Empire will not forgive this. They will come for us with everything they have. Hannah took his hand. Then we will face them together. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Admiral Kwan received the final reports. All 17 prison worlds had been liberated. The fleet had lost 31 ships and over 2,000 soldiers. But they had saved their people. Dr. Yoon Mina stood beside him, reading data on her tablet. Her husband had been among the freed prisoners. He was thin and weak, but alive. She had not left his side for 3 hours after finding him. The Empire is mobilizing, she reported. Our scouts detect large fleet movements from the core systems. They are gathering everything they have. Kwan nodded. He had expected this. The Velens would not accept this humiliation. They would throw everything they had at humanity to prove their power. How long until they reach us? 3 weeks. Maybe less. 3 weeks. 3 weeks to prepare for the largest battle in human history. 3 weeks to decide the fate of their entire species. Then we have work to do, Kwan said. He looked at the star map, at the distant dot that marked Velen Prime. They will come to us with fury and pride. They will expect us to run or hide. He turned to face his officers. These men and women had followed him into the unknown. They had fought and bled and lost friends. Now they waited for his command. We will not run, Kwan said. We will not hide. We will meet them in the darkness between stars. And we will show them what humanity is made of. The officers saluted. Outside the ship, the liberated prisoners looked through windows at a galaxy they had never expected to see again. They were going home. But home was now a battlefield. And the final battle was yet to come. 3,000 warships gathered above Velen Prime. It was the largest fleet in the history of the Empire. Each ship was built for war, armed with weapons that could crack planets open. Emperor Kores himself stood on the bridge of the flagship Eternal Dominion, watching his armada take position. They will come, he said to his generals. The humans are not cowards. They will come to finish what they started. General Veth nodded confidently. And when they do, we will destroy them. They have 200 ships at most. We have 3,000. The mathematics are simple. Corey's was not so sure. The mathematics had been simple before, and yet the humans had destroyed an outpost, blinded an entire sector, and freed every prisoner they had taken. This species did not follow the rules of war that the Empire understood. But what choice did he have? To retreat would be to admit weakness. To negotiate would be to accept equality with primitives. The Empire could only survive through strength, through victory. Prepare for battle, he ordered. Let no human ship escape. Far away, the human fleet gathered at the edge of the Valen system. 212 ships, the remains of humanity's desperate construction effort. Some were damaged from the prison raids. All were running low on supplies and ammunition. Admiral Quan Te looked at them through the bridge window of the Indomitable. Behind him, his offie. Seers were silent. They all knew the numbers. They all knew what they faced. Any word from Earth? Quan asked. Nothing new, his communications officer replied. The Council sends their prayers. They have nothing else to send. Quan nodded. Earth had given everything it had. There were no reinforcements coming. No secret weapons waiting to be revealed. This was it. 200 ships against 3,000. Dr. Yoon Mina entered the bridge. She looked tired but determined. Her husband stood beside her, still weak from his captivity, but refusing to leave her side. The fold space calculations are ready, she reported. We can jump directly into their formation. They will not expect that. It is suicide, General Beek-Sung said. They will surround us in seconds. Perhaps, Mina replied, but we will be close enough to hurt them. And that is all we need. Captain Park Jun commanded the destroyer Hannah's Vengeance. He had named it himself in honor of his sister. She had died 3 days ago during a counterattack on one of the prison transports. A Velan ship had rammed her medical shuttle. There had been no survivors. Jun had not cried. He had not slept. He had simply reported for duty and requested a ship of his own. Now he sat in the captain's chair and looked at the images of the Velan fleet. 3,000 ships waiting to kill everything he loved. Are you afraid? His first officer asked quietly. No, Jun replied. I am angry. Admiral Quan opened a channel to all ships. His face appeared on every screen in the fleet. Today we face the full power of an empire that has ruled the stars for centuries, he said. They have more ships. They have more weapons. They have everything except one thing. He paused. They do not have our reason to fight. They fight for pride. They fight for power. We fight for our families, our friends, our world. We fight for everyone who was taken from their homes and treated like animals. We fight so that no human will ever again be harvested like grain. His voice grew stronger. The Velans believe this war is about territory and resources. They are wrong. This war is about something far more important. It is about who we are. It is about what we are willing to do to protect each other. It is about the message we send every species in this galaxy. He raised his hand. That message is simple. Do not touch our people. Ever. He brought his hand down. All ships. Jump. The human fleet vanished in a flash of light. They reappeared in the heart of the Velan formation, exactly as Mina had calculated. For a single heartbeat, the enemy ships were too surprised to react. Then the battle began. Nuclear fire erupted in every direction. Human ships, smaller and faster than their enemies, twisted through gaps in the Velan lines. They fired constantly, not aiming for kills, but for damage. Engines, sensors, weapon systems. Every hit slowed the giant Velan warships down. The Velans returned fire with devastating force. Human ships exploded by the dozen. But for every human vessel destroyed, 30 Velan ships fell. The special warheads punched through shields that had never failed before. The fold space drives let human ships appear and disappear unpredictably. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, Emperor Corys watched in horror as his fleet was torn apart. "This is impossible," General Veth stammered. "They should not be able to do this." "Clearly they can," Corys replied coldly. "Adapt. Overcome. That is what warriors do." But his warriors could not adapt. They had never faced an enemy like this. Human tactics were chaotic, unpredictable, impossible to counter. Every time the Velans formed a new strategy, the humans had already changed theirs. The battle lasted 11 hours. 11 hours of fire and death and screaming ships. The void filled with debris and bodies from both sides. The Hana's vengeance took 17 hits before Captain Park Jun ordered the final attack. His ship was dying, but it could still move. It could still fight. He aimed directly at the Eternal Dominion. "All power to engines," he ordered. "Arm the remaining warheads." His crew obeyed without hesitation. They knew what this meant. They did not care. The Hana's vengeance struck the VLN flagship at full speed. The impact tore through armor that had never been breached. The nuclear warheads detonated inside the ship's core. Emperor Corys had time for one last word before the fire consumed him. Impossible. When the explosion faded, the Eternal Dominion was gone. And with it, the will of the Velan fleet. Surviving Velan ships began to retreat. Some surrendered. Others fled into the darkness of space. Within hours, the battle was over. The human fleet had lost 173 ships. Over 40,000 soldiers were dead. But they had won. Admiral Quan broadcast a message to the remaining Velan forces. "Your emperor is dead. Your fleet is broken. This war ends now. Go home. Tell your people what happened here. Tell them that humanity did not start this war, but we finished it." He paused. "And tell them this. We have no interest in your empire. We have no desire for conquest. But if you ever threaten our people again, we will return. And next time, we will not stop until there is nothing left to threaten." The message spread across the galaxy. Every species heard it. Every empire took note. Humanity had arrived. 50 years later, an old man stood in a cemetery overlooking Seoul. The city had been rebuilt, more beautiful than before. Ships passed overhead, carrying passengers to colonies on distant worlds. Park Jun laid flowers on his sister's memorial. The inscription was simple. Hana, healer, fighter, human. Behind him, children played in the grass. They had never known war. They had never known fear. They only knew the stories of the heroes who had protected them. Jun touched the stone and whispered, "We brought them all home." Above him, the stars burned cold and bright. The galaxy had not forgotten what happened. The galaxy had learned. Humanity was not prey. Humanity was not livestock. Humanity was awake. And the universe would never make the mistake of forgetting that again.